Hello and welcome to chapter 11 guys, and in this chapter we will be talking about managing databases. Now initially when we started, we created a database using create database, then listed database using show databases, and then selected a database to work on using use database, right? So now in this chapter we will be doing more about databases and learning more about tables and how to create table, like this, alter and drop the tables, storage engines, how to rename a table once you have created it, and what are temporary tables, truncating tables, and generated columns. So these are the things we'll be talking about in this chapter. So it's basically knowing more about the databases and tables itself instead of doing query writing, data manipulation queries and selecting and that stuff. Not instead of that, we will be learning more about the structure of the databases, how to change the database name, how to delete database, how to delete tables, and that kind of stuff. All right, so the basic database operations we have already covered. That involves creating a database, using database, and drop db. Now we had done this in command line. Let's use this again in our workbench, and this time we will create database only if this database does not exist. So we can do that by using the not exists keyword. So let's open up your workbench. Now here in your workbench you can go to databases. No, not databases, I'm sorry. You can just click on this SQL and this with this plus sign, and here you can write your commands, right? So let's say we want to create a table database named classic models, right? So if you want to create that, what we can do is we can write create database, and then we write classic models, right? Let's say someone chooses to create this database, but in our server we already have this database, right? Classic models, and we have another one that is called MyNewDB. So we have two databases here, and this is the system database, so you don't need to worry about this. This contains system details of this MySQL server, this kind of stuff, so you don't worry about this at the moment. Now we have two of the databases at the moment, that is classic models and MyNewDB, and we are creating a third one, and this name is same as this classic models, right? So let's see what happens when we run this query. We hit Control Enter, and we can see here error 1007, database already exists. So it exists, right? So instead of getting this error, what we can do is we can write create databases, right? And then we write if not exists, and then classic models. Now when we run this query, we will not get an error because we are checking here. Okay, so what we'll get is we'll get a warning, and it says can't create database because database exists. So this is a warning. When we have multiple commands, let's say this command, and then we are selecting something, and then we are doing something else in a SQL file. If there's an error, the commands below it will not be executed, but if there's just a warning, the queries below it will also be executed. So that's why we use this if not, so that because of the error, the whole execution of the queries below this command that has this error does not stop. Okay, so now let's create some other table. Let's create not table, database. Create database, let's call it another one. Okay, and let's hit Control Enter, and you can see we have another one created here. If we refresh this, you'll see another one here, right? Now to delete this, what we can do is we can simply drop db and do this. Not db here, my bad. You just drop it. Okay, there is a command error. Anyhow, it's good because let's not delete it at the moment. There is one more thing we need to do. What we need to do is we need to now see the list of databases, let's say. So we go show databases, right? And hit Control Enter, and here you can see the list of databases that we have, right? So these are the list of databases that we have. Now we have another one that we just created, classic models, the information. This is the default one, MyNewDB, and these are the databases of MySQL server itself. So Now what we can do is we have the list of databases, right? Now let's say this has okay, is there anything that we have here? We have table underscore persons, right? Okay, so to use a database, what we can do is we can write use another one, right? And hit control enter, and now this was already in bold, but if we use this query, use another one, now this database is selected. What I mean by selected is if there is if we write select all from customers, right? And as we can see here, there is no tables here because we had not created any tables, and hit control enter, and as you can see we get an error, table another one customers does not exist, right? Because we don't have this table. Now instead of another one, if we use classic models and hit control enter, we get 0 rows affected because it's just selected, and if we hit control enter here, we get a list of customers. So that's why this use is also necessary, because you know we might have same table names in multiple databases, so we need to use one to select from that databases table. Okay, so that's why we use now. So we have learned how to create a database, we have learned to create a database using if not query, and now we will learn to delete database. Okay, so let's again list databases. Now these are the databases, and let's say we want to delete a database. It's delete database, guys, not delete db, delete database. Delete database, drop database. Let's say we want to delete this another one. Okay, not another one, let's say we want to delete our mynewdb. So if we drop mynewdb, and instead of db, what happened is you made a mistake, you wrote dd, right? You hit control enter and you get an error, can't drop if this does not exist, right? So similar to creating a database, what we can do is we can drop database and write if exists. Now in creation, what we used to do is drop database, create database if not exist. Now here we do drop database if exists, because we want to delete only if it exists, right? Now if we do, and we get a warning, and we say okay, why can't we delete this? And we know why can't we delete this. Then we write db here, and then we hit control enter, and there is no more mynewdb. Okay, so that's all about the database operations, right? That is creating a database, using a database name, and then dropping a database. Now welcome to the second part of this chapter, and in this one we will learn more about MySQL storage engines. So storage engine is kind of essential to understand the features of each one, because you know you can use them to maximize the performance of your databases if you have a lot of data. But for now, for beginners, you don't have to go into depth, because you can do a lot of stuff. You can be doing a lot of stuff without understanding these features, because the default one these days is InnoDB, and you know you might to be able to do a lot of things without even understanding that there is something called storage engines. But since we are here, I want to let you know what these are, and what are the different features that different storage engines have. So by default, what is storage engines, right? Storage engines is how the data is stored, so that how it can be accessed. Now how the data is stored depends on how it can be accessed, and what is the size of the database, and how much it is compressed, what features you have on the database. So that is storage engine. By default, at the moment, what your MySQL server has is it's InnoDB, INNODB. Okay, so this is the default one, and this is the most commonly used, because it has the features that is required in most of the applications, 90% of the applications I can say these days. So let's check out some other database storage engines that we have. First of all it's MyISAM. Now it is optimized for compression speed, and it has size up to 256 GB. Now it is terabyte. This terabyte is not of the database size, but a single table can be of this much size. So you can imagine now how large a database can be. Okay, now it has checks for corruptions and repairs, and this was the one that's used by default before MySQL Server 5.5, right? But now this is no longer popular one. This is no longer used by default because we have generically the better one, that is this one. Now what this is it's ACID compliant. It's called ACID properties. So what are ACID properties? Now, ACID stands for atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. Atomicity means transactions are all or nothing, like we kind of discussed in the chapter before this, right? So by atomicity, what we can let me give you a proper example. Like, let's say you go to the ATM machine and you withdraw some cash, right? Now the cash was deducted from your account, but you don't get the money due to some inconsistency or some network problem, right? That cannot happen, because if your cash is reduced, then you must get the cash out from the machine, right? So that is called atomicity. The transactions are all or nothing. If the cash is reduced, then you get the cash. If the cash is reduced and due to some problems in the ATM machine, you don't get the cash out, then that is not atomic, because one of the transaction is done, other is not done. So INNODB allows you to have atomicity in the transactions. Now this is consistency. Only valid data is saved, right? Now if you try to insert something in the table that is not of the correct data type, then the wrong data type will not be saved. Like, let's say if you try to insert a string and integer or number column, then it will not be saved. Okay. And isolation is, as you can see here, transactions do not affect each other. Okay, sorry, it means if you are operating one table or one data, then the other data is not affected. And there have been like multiple a lot of sessions to a database, right? I am connected to the same database, you are connected to the same database. If a lot of people are working, the transaction of one user will not affect another one. Okay. And this is durability. Written data will not be lost. Once you write to the database, that data will not be lost unless you delete it. Okay, unless you delete it, or unless there is some corruption, the data will not be lost in most cases, unless you do something that has to delete the data. Okay, so that is ACID properties, and it is very important these days because most of the applications that we use must have this ACID properties, and your database should support the application's features, right? So always, if you are not confused on what storage engine to use, always use the one that supports this ACID properties. Okay, now we are back here and we can see this is also optimized for performance. This supports foreign keys, commit, roll back, roll forward. Now these are the features that you must have for most of the applications. Now personally speaking, I have not used my ISAM or other storage engines, but I know they exist. So if case arises, I might have to look into these further, but at the moment I have not yet used these other storage engines. I have just used INNODB because it has a lot of features. It is ACID compliant, it has primary key, foreign key features. And when basically studying MySQL or SQL in college or in some other courses, you will be taught about primary keys, foreign keys, primary keys and foreign keys, because these are basically like the core of operations these days, like core of the databases. Okay, so this is what we have been using till now, and this is what we will be using in future. Now this merge table is, as you can see, a virtual table combining multiple MyISM tables, right? So it is similar to the structure of one table, right? Now by that I mean is, if you are combining 2 or 3 tables, their structure must be similar. Okay, and this table does not have its own indexes. It uses the indexes of component tables instead. So what does index means? Index means the keys, right? Primary keys, foreign keys, those are indexes, and they're also known as this MRG underscore MyISM, because MRG stands for merge. And then we have memory, archive, and CSV. Now memory tables are stored in memory, not in hard drive or hard disks, and they use hash indexes. That means they also have hash indexing, but they are faster than MyISAM. And since they are stored in memory, they are definitely the size is definitely a limitations for these kind of storage engines. and they are a lot faster because, as you know, if it is stored in memory, that is RAM itself, it is a lot faster than other databases, but the features are fairly limited, so you don't probably use this ever. These are also known as heaps. And this archive database storage engine is whenever you have a database that is huge, and operations kind of become hectic to store this, to get data and to store data. It becomes hectic because you have to filter, right? You have to select it, you have to select specific rows from database. And if this database is a huge database, then the filtering and selecting might take a lot of time. So what you do is you archive those databases and you create a duplicate with less data or faster access. So you archive those databases, and this is mainly for archiving purposes. It has compressed format to save disk, and it only allows insert and select statement. Okay. And the CSV is as you know, CSV is comma separated values, as you can see here. And CSV is what you open in your Excel sheet and your Google Sheets. So in CSV, it is data is stored in comma separated values. So one benefit is you can use it in any kind of Excel sheets and Google Sheets, but the SQL queries and features are not that much. Okay, so these were MySQL storage engines. Now if you want to learn more about it, you are free to learn about it. You can learn more about it, but as of now we were only using INNODB, and we will be learning about foreign keys, commit, rollback, and roll forward. And this is the most common one. This is what most of the people use. This is what is supported in all the applications. So, and also it is multi-platform, so you can use it in Linux, Ubuntu, Mac. So this is the one that you will probably use for the rest of your database days too. So okay, let's proceed now. So now we will learn more about table operations. By more, I mean a little deeply about table operations. We have already done table operations in chapter, the beginning chapters. We have done create table and then we inserted data into it. So now we will learn how we can do more stuff while we are creating table, like how we can set a default value, how we can set data type, that kind of stuff. So open up your workbench. Now, as you already know, creating table is pretty easy. You just write create table and then you write the table name. Let's say, okay, let's not use this to create table. Let's create table in another one. All right, so double click on that, so that will be used. Or if you are hardcore, you want to use command, you can just use another one. Okay, and once another one is used, what you can write is you just write your create table query, that is create table test table, and then you write the column names, right? So let's say id is integer, and let's say name, this is just a test, so I'm writing random values, right? And this is varchar is, as I've told you, it stores text data. This is what is the size of the text data that I can store. And then you just to create table name, column names, and then if I hit Control Enter and I hit refresh here, as you can see, I have a test table here. Okay, now if you want to delete this test table, what do? You just write the command drop table test table, right? Or not? Okay, it's here. You just do this, hit Control Enter, and as you can see, the table is gone. So this is pretty much similar to database. Dropping the table is similar to dropping database. Okay, so now we have done create table. Now what we will do is alter table. Now what alter table does is it changes the table after it's created. Okay, now let's say this is the table, right? We have a students table and we have in it the columns ID, name, and address. Now let's say we also need a column that defines whether the student is still active or not. Let's say 100 students rolled out in the beginning of the year or the beginning of the classes, and then some students dropped out due to some reasons. So we need to define if the student is still active or not. Now while we were creating the table, we could have added another column calling it is active, and Let's also discuss another data type at the moment. There's also a data type called boolean, right? Now boolean stores either true or false values. That means if the student is active, we can store true. If the student is not active, we can store false. Now how are true and false stored in the database? They are stored as 1 and 0. True means 1 and 0 means false. So whenever there's a 1 or 0 value in our boolean column, that means 1 is true and 0 is false. But we insert it ourselves, so you need to know that. And let's say it's not null, because a student can either be active or can be not active. So they cannot be a student that does not have a status. Okay, the student either needs to be active or needs to be inactive. So we add not null here. There was our primary key. Okay, now if we hit Control Enter again to run this, and as we expected, we'll have an error. Create table students already exists, right? And if we write, instead of directly creating, if we write create table if not exists, right? And then our table name, and if we hit Control Enter, we get a warning. Okay, so now how can we add this column? It's simple. The way I just told you can add it using create table. Sorry, alter table, my bad, I'm messing up words a lot today. It's alter table. So what is the query is it's alter table. I'll just write it for you so that let's comment it. So I'll just write the basic syntax here, and we can replace it with the actual values in the line below it. Alter table, and then you write the table name, and then you write add, and then you write new column name. Okay, and then column definition, what is wrong with me, column definition. And then where do you want to insert this column? Do you want to insert it in the beginning, or at the end, or after another column, right? So this is the syntax. It's pretty simple. Now you can try to add this is active column using this without me writing it. So you can just replace the table name, column definition with what you want, and the column definition is boolean, not null. Okay, you can try it, and I'm trying it here myself. You can try it without looking. Okay guys, so I am done. Now what I just found out is there is no end here. Now I thought there was an end here, because in the GUI, while inserting another column in some of the MySQL clients, there is an end option here. So it fooled my mind. There is no end. So that's what happens when you use GUI. You think stuff out there that does not exist. Now all the table students add is active in the column definition, and then after address, because I want to add it at the end. Now if you don't do this, by default it will be at end, inserted after the address. Okay, so if you want to insert it after name, then you can add it after name column. Okay, now if I hit Control Enter, as you can see, our column is created. There it is. Now let's say you messed up. You used your beautiful brain and you added it to boolean, but because it's either active or not active, but somehow your supervisors or someone asks you to change it not to boolean and is active, as you want to write a whole sentence there. Yes, this student is active. No, this student is not active. The kind of stuff you want to write that. So how can you do that? Now you know how to alter table to add a column. Now what you want to do is you want to alter table to modify a column. So what you can write is, I'll give you this whole SQL, so let me write some comments here. Creating table, and now altering to modify column. Okay, from here I'll delete this because again we are adding this later. Okay, now let's alter to modify column. We just write alter table, and then which table we want to modify, students, and which column do you want to modify. You want to modify is active column, right? As active. Now you just write what you want it to be, data type. You want it to be varchar, right? Varchar, and you want it to store up to 255 characters, and you don't want it to be null. Okay, now you hit Control Enter, and there you go. Your student is modified. Okay, now this is active has been changed to, what has been changed to? It has been changed to boolean, not boolean, my bad, varchar. Where is my SQL file? It's here. It has been changed to varchar. Okay, you can check it out. You can go here, and as you can see here, our is active is a varchar now. Okay, so that's how you modify a column. Now you add a column like this, you modify a column like this. That's plain and simple. You just change the modify, add keyword with modify. Okay, so now modify a column again, and let's add a default value to it. Okay, let's say by default you want the students to be active. Okay, so by default the students will be active, because if the student is not enrolled, then why would you even insert it? Okay, so you modify it, right? Is active, you write varchar, right, 255, and then not null, and then default true. Yes, this is active, right? And then you hit Control Enter, and the student is modified. If you go here again, okay, let me, okay, not this, what is it? Yeah, let's check it out, and default is yes, this is active. Okay, so if you insert a student and don't insert is active, the default will be yes, this is active. Okay, so now you know how to add a column. Now you know how to modify a column to change its data type. Now you know how to modify a column to change its data type and set a null value. So go ahead, add another random column. We will delete it later. We will see how to delete it. Just add another column. Okay, without looking, let's go. I'm also adding something. Okay guys, so I am done. Now this is the query. I just copied it from here, just changed the column name, and I call it to delete. Okay, let's hit Control Enter, and this column is created, as you can see here. If we refresh this, we'll have our column here. Now how can you delete this to delete column? How can you can guess? At this point you should be able to guess, because how do we delete the database? How do we delete the column? What was the keyword? Drop, right? So you write drop column, and then you go to delete, right? If you hit Control Enter, you get an error. Now drop database works, drop table works. Why is this drop column not working? Because when you do drop database, there's only one database, is one name. If you do drop table, there is only one table with same name in that database, right? Now if you do drop column, now it does not know which table's column to drop, so you need to define which column. So now this is also a alter statement. and alter statement. So you write alter table and then students table, and then you write the drop command. Okay, and hit Control Enter. Okay, I messed up the spelling again. Hit Control Enter here, and it is gone. If you refresh it, you'll see today it is no more. So what can you do with alter table? You can either add a column, you can modify a column, and you can drop a column. Okay, so that's all for alter table. Okay, I forgot one thing. Now what if you want the students table to not be called students, you want it to be called something else? Let's say this is not a college, or a school. Let's say it's a an office. So this can be employees, right? So how can you change this? How can you change a table name? Changing table name. Just adding this comment. Now I'll share this SQL file with you, so you can download this. And the command is pretty simple. Let's just alter table students, rename to employees. That's all. You hit Control Enter, and now if you refresh this, our students are no longer students. They are employees. They are working, they study, and now they are no more students. They are employees. Okay, so yep, I think this will be it. Yes, this is it. Okay, now there's one more way to rename a table, that is using the rename command itself. You just write rename table, and then you write employees, and you want to rename it to students. So if you want to do this, you hit Control Enter. The employees will be renamed to students. If you refresh, you'll see these are students. So now we know two ways of renaming a table. First is alter table and table name, and then rename to students. This is now similar to that. You just add alter table. Now we want to rename it back to employees. You write alter table name, and then you write rename to employees. Right, now hit Control Enter. As you can see, this is executed successfully. If you refresh it, it's again changed to employees. So there are two ways of renaming a table. You can use whichever one you want to use. Okay, a quick review, because we went through a lot of things in this part. So first we created a table using create table name. Let's try to remember, guys. We just create, the command is, or the query is, create table name, and then column 1, column definition, column 2, and then column 2 definition. And then we did alter table, and after alter table you write the table name, and then what do you want to do with the table. While altering the table, you always write alter table first, and then you write the table name. So alter table name is first, right? And then you write what you want to do with it. You want to add a column, you do add column. You want to modify a column, you do modify a column. You want to delete a column, you do drop column. And you want to rename, you do rename table name, old table name to new table name. Okay, so what was the full rename table query, if you guys remember, because it's not written here. It's alter table name, rename to this. Okay, so that was one way of renaming table. Now sorry, and we also drop the table using drop table. We also drop the column using alter table name, and drop the column name. Okay, so these are the things we went through in this chapter, this part. Okay, so we will move on now.